The reason I like the Moffat line is that it's a challenge photographically. There are very few tunnels that you can even drive to. Most of the good shots you have to walk in. There's not a lot of traffic. You kind of have to pick your trains and pick your times of day and know what time of day the light is best at what place. Listen to the scanner, know what's going on. It's not a line where a road runs right alongside of it. You have to hike into a lot of the better places. It's just not easy to shoot. You've got to do a lot of climbing, a lot of thinking about where the trains are going to be for the position of the sun and the time of year. It's just a challenge. The scenery is spectacular, probably not unlike other mountain locations in the Northwest and in the West, but it's certainly beautiful with the tunnels and canyons that we have. It's certainly a drawing card for one wanting to get great shots.
When the Union Pacific pushed westward in the 1860s, the city of Denver was the largest center of population between the Missouri River and the Pacific. Not surprisingly, the city's civic pride was hurt when the Union Pacific built through Cheyenne, Wyoming, 100 miles north. UP's reason was simple. The Rocky Mountains immediately west of Denver were an almost insurmountable barrier. Routes had been surveyed west from Denver, but all were at considerably higher elevations than the route UP selected across Wyoming. What's more, all required much tunneling, an expensive task. Despite this, David Moffat incorporated the Denver, Northwestern, and Pacific in 1902 to build a line from Denver west to Salt Lake City. His story and ours starts at Denver, the mile-high city that takes its name from its altitude above sea level. We then follow the route of Moffat's railroad through Leiden to Rocky. The first direct assault on the Rockies is the Tunnel District, 12.5 tunnel-pocked miles between plain and cliff. We then continue west through Rollins to Toland, the east end of Moffat's original route over Rollins Pass. Completion of the Moffat Tunnel in 1928 brought a shorter, less troublesome route between the East Portal and Winter Park. From Fraser, we continue west to the west end of the old main line at Tabernash. Track speed picks up as we head through Granby and Kremling. Our story wraps up at Orestad, the junction with the coal-producing Craig Branch. Where a train originates in Denver depends on the railroad. Amtrak's California Zephyr continues its journey from Chicago by heading for the Rockies from Denver Union Station. Completed in 1881, the depot was rebuilt in 1914 to its present appearance. A separate company, Denver Union Terminal, served Union Pacific, Rio Grande Standard and Narrow Gauge trains, Rock Island, Colorado and Southern Standard and Narrow Gauge trains, plus Santa Fe, Missouri Pacific, and the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy. Today's station is a far cry from Union Station's glory days. In 1932, for example, the station employed 276 people. As late as the 1950s and early 1960s, the workforce numbered about 600 people, with 100 to 200 added during the Christmas season. Amtrak's California Zephyr operates daily between Chicago and Emeryville in the San Francisco Bay Area. Power is normally a trio of General Electric Genesis units rated between 4,000 and 4,200 horsepower and dubbed P40s or P42s. Older General Motors F40s rated at 3,000 horsepower sometimes pinch hit for the GEs. Westbound UP freights originate at milepost 2.5 on the Moffat Tunnel subdivision, known as North Yard.
Well, North Yard, of course, was the principal Rio Grande yard in Denver. Rock Island freight trains also terminated there. And then it became, of course, Southern Pacific and now Union Pacific, and is still the main yard for the Union Pacific in Denver. Union Pacific has another yard, more or less marshals the trains going to and from Cheyenne. But this is the main yard that handles the Moffat traffic. BNSF's Rennick's Yard, their piggyback facility, Denver piggyback facility, lies parallel to North Yard, just to the east side of it. And BNSF trains that come out on the Moffat come up through Rennick's Yard and then out onto the Moffat.
Moffat line freight units congregate at the North Yard engine facility. Most trains are powered by 6-motor units, such as UP 9180, a GE C40-8. Built in 1988 with a standard cab, it's rated at 4,000 horsepower. Gray and red SP units reflect Moffat line predecessor SP, purchased by Denver and Rio Grande Western in 1988. Other former SP units include this GM SW1500. Repainted in UP colors, it's rated at 1,500 horsepower and used for yard switching. Leiden was once Leiden Junction. Here, in the early 20th century, Moffat's standard gauge Denver, Northwestern, and Pacific interchanged coal hauled by a narrow gauge interurban railroad, the Denver and Northwestern.
The coal is a pretty high-grade coal, and it comes off the branch and comes down to Denver. Some of it goes to Colorado Springs. CSDU trains we see quite often take it down there. Some of it comes to public service here at Denver. And other trains continue on the Kansas Pacific on toward Kansas City. Some go down the joint line to Texas. There are a number of locations or destinations for these trains.
Coal train power on the Moffat line is generally 6-motor high-horsepower units. Typical is UP 6669, a GE AC 4400 powered by a 4,400 horsepower diesel engine. It also features AC traction, which delivers high adhesion and less maintenance than conventional DC traction units. SP 183 is another AC 4400. It wears SP's last logo, inspired by the speed lettering worn by Rio Grande diesels. Leiden also serves as a convenient place to swap crews. With a new engineer and conductor on board, our empty unit coal train starts west. For locomotive fans, though, there's more to come, specifically the train's distributed power units, known as DPUs.
Well, all the coal trains have DPUs. The loaded coal trains coming down have DPUs. And most, not all, but most of the westbound coal empties have DPUs. DPUs are operated from the lead in. The engineer operates those locomotives. There's no one physically aboard those engines. The BNSF manifest trains, the westbound, will have manned helpers. They'll have a 2-unit manned helper set on the rear of the train. And they'll follow the train up to the Moffat Tunnel or perhaps to Tabernash and then turn and come back light. Or they'll come back at the point of another BNSF train.
One of the few Moffat Line trains to draw 4-motor power is the West Local.
The local train, which usually has rear grand GP40s these days, runs out of North Yard to Rocky, and then up the Rocky Spur to Rocky Flats, and switches up there for a few hours. There's an aggregate company up there.
Rocky takes its name from the nearby Rocky Flats plant of the Atomic Energy Commission's Mountain Arsenal. Rocky sits in a broad gully system known locally as Barbara Gulch. The station marks the north wall of an expansive bowl just south of Coal Creek Canyon. At Rocky, the West Local shuffles its cars for the return trip to North Yard. First, the train backs up the spur and stops. Leaving its train on the spur, the power heads west and stops. After the conductor throws the switch, the power heads east on the main line and stops again. Propelled by gravity, the two tank cars roll down the spur and stop on the main line. Moments later, the power moves west to couple onto the east end of the cars. With the tank cars in tow, the local heads back up the spur, then stops. The local's now prepared to return east with the two tanks at the rear of the train. On its next trip out, the local will shove the hoppers north to the aggregate loading facility. The arrival of the westbound UP freight brings the local's activities to a halt. The train is bound for UP's Roper Yard in Salt Lake City. Any thoughts the West Local has of leaving town are dashed by the arrival of a westbound BNSF train. Bound for Stockton, California, it operates on UP trackage rights granted as a condition of the UP-SP merger.
Well, Big Ten Curve, of course, Big Ten and Little Ten Curve is a very famous location, and it was laid that way so that the railroad could gain elevation to reach that height in order to run along the face of the foothills there before they cut back west into Boulder Canyon. Well, they're not really loops. Some people think of them as loops. They're really a series of horseshoes. And there is a big elevation difference between the different aspects of the Big Ten curves where you can get trains stacked upon, photographically, you can get trains stacked upon one another and all this, or 2 or 3 trains in one shot and all that. It's quite a challenge to do, but it's a lot of fun.
Leaving the Little and Big Ten curves behind, a westbound train from the Colorado Springs Department of Utilities enters the mouth of Coal Creek Canyon. The view looking north shows the difference in elevation as the CSDU train climbs the 2% grade out of the canyon. Moments later, the westbound grinds to a halt, a victim of track work a few miles to the west. The maintenance window affects Moffat line traffic. A westbound BNSF merchandise train stops east of Blue Mountain Road crossing. Up front are 3 GE C-44-9s in the railroad's heritage paint scheme, inspired by the colors of predecessor Great Northern. Although the BNSF units closely resemble UP's AC-4400s, the C-44s come with DC traction motors. Westbounds that don't get stabbed by track work bore through a 356-foot-long tunnel to reach the upthrust eastern side of the Front Range. This is Tunnel 1, the east end of the so-called Tunnel District. Colorado Highway 72 more or less follows UP's tunnel district between Coal Creek and Pine Cliff. But getting close to the tracks, well, that's another story.
Yeah, the tunnel district generally starts with tunnel number 1 at Plain, or just east of Plain, and runs through tunnel 29 at Cliff. The tunnels are all inaccessible except by high rail. It's a very remote area, very scenic, very beautiful, but kind of hard to get to.
Cliff marks the west end of the tunnel district at milepost 37. The tiny U.S. post office at Cliff has a fine view of the Moffat line, even when it's an eastbound coal train parked in the siding.
Now, it's fairly often to find trains in many of the sidings all the way between Denver and the Moffat Tunnel without crews. They've gone dead on the law. The management has decided they're not ready for the trains yet, so they'll tie them up in the sidings and relieve the crews. They'll come up and pick up the crews and take them back to Denver. The trains will sit there for a number of hours or maybe a day or so until they're ready for them.
An old Rio Grande flat car serves as a bridge over South Boulder Creek near the west end of Cliff. At 6,900 feet in length, Cliff Siding is a convenient place to meet trains. Case in point, a westbound merchandise freight passing the rear DPUs on a stopped eastbound coal train. The rocks that give Pine Cliff its name are evident at the east end of the siding. The signals here are as physically different from each other as Laurel and Hardy. The BNSF train delayed by track work at Plain rolls into Cliff Siding to meet the eastbound California Zephyr. With the freight stopped, the UP dispatcher in Omaha, Nebraska lines Amtrak through Cliff on the main line. Located near milepost 40, Pactolus Lake no longer rates a mention in the UP timetable. But in the 1940s, the Denver and Rio Grande Western served a thriving business here, ice.
The ice came from the pond here, which eventually was called Pactolus Lake. It wasn't big, it was only 5 acres, and we did harvest 7,500 tons of ice off of that thing in 2 crops. The Moffat Road was in operation those days, and everything was steam, was pretty neat, and they'd sit out here in the evening sometimes and a seeming, waste an hour switching cars and stuff. But they'd set us in all new stuff and take the old stuff out and go out. And of course we knew most of those working crews, and it was kind of fun to, well now it is, it's fun to think about it. It was a friendly feeling to have something like steam, and it was so alive. And when they were working hard to get uphill and they were carrying, pulling a big load, it was just absolutely alive. I mean, I get excited about this.
The ice house at Pactolus Lake changed to an ice skating rink after the ice business died in the 1950s. The railroad served the new business with excursion trains operated out of Denver. Eventually, the ice rink folded, leaving little more than dusty ice skates and memories. The railroad shortened the name of Rollinsville to Rollins, located at milepost 42.1.
Rollins is an also important siding. It's located about 45 miles or so, actually about 43 miles west of Denver, and they use that a lot to meet trains.
Railroads operate in any kind of weather, rain or shine. On the east end of the Moffat line, the weather can change quickly. A westbound empty coal train rolls into the Rollins siding as the light changes. A glance overhead shows clouds moving fast, blotting out the sun, threatening rain. By the time the train grinds to a halt, the light has changed from sunny to overcast. Moments later, it starts to rain. The cab of UP 6586 looks like a warm, dry place to wait for the eastbound train to show up. After the eastbound clears the west end of the siding, 6586 leaves the west end and heads for Tolan, 5 miles to the west.
Tolan is a fairly short siding, but they do use it occasionally for meets. It was a very important location on the Denver and Salt Lake. They had locomotive facilities there and hotels and bars and what have you. It was a lively place in its day. Now there's nothing left except the railroad siding. It was just an important location because back in the days, especially in the days before the Moffat Tunnel, when the Denver and Salt Lake went over Rollins Pass, it was at the bottom of the hill. So it was an important helper location and just an important facility for the railroad. There is a sheriff that lives next to the tracks there who has the original Tolan station sign tacked to his garage, and he's a little sensitive about speeders driving by his house. He's got 15-mile-an-hour speed limit signs all up and down the gravel road in front of his house, so visitors to the Moffat Tunnel should be forewarned.
You wouldn't know it from the cows grazing near the UP main line, but Tolan was once a favorite weekend destination for Denver tourists. As many as 3,000 people came up on 11 trains in one day. Cattle guards at a rural grade crossing in Tolan prevent cows from wandering onto the UP main line. It wouldn't be easy for most humans either. Fortunately, the cattle guards don't prevent UP from swapping crews at the grade crossing. With only 12 hours to work per trip under federal law, Moffat Line crews often run out of time before they arrive at their home terminal. An eastbound coal train rolls to a stop at the grade crossing. The relief crew is already on duty, delivered to the crossing by Retzenberger, a private limousine service that serves as a crew hauler. The crew change doesn't take long. The relief crew climbs aboard and prepares to take the train east. But first, there's westbound Amtrak number 5 to wait for. When Amtrak clears, the eastbound makes its move. They quickly build speed, due in part to the fact that it's headed down grade. When a crew change isn't involved, trains roll through Tolan at speed. What looks like a small creek near Toland is one of Denver's main water supplies. South Boulder Creek carries west slope water routed through a tunnel next to the actual Moffat Tunnel. Passing within sight of the creek is an eastbound BNSF merchandise freight. Maybe we've seen too many unit coal trains, but we decide to watch the entire train pass. As you might guess from its name, East Portal marks the east end of the Moffat Tunnel at milepost 50.1. Looking for a home with a view of the railroad? Consider these houses at East Portal. They're also within walking distance of what's arguably the highlight of the Moffat line, the 6.2-mile-long Moffat Tunnel.
Moffat Tunnel, what a great piece of engineering that is. It's about 6.2 miles, and of course it goes underneath the Continental Divide. The tunnel, of course, is being over 6 miles long. It has to be ventilated. When a train enters for example, the west end of the tunnel, you'll have cooling fans that go on the east end of the tunnel and blow fresh air through the tunnel, so the locomotives and crews will have some semblance of fresh air. As the train approaches the east end of the tunnel, the curtain on the east end of the tunnel goes up, and the train can exit the tunnel. And once the train is outside the tunnel, then the exhaust fans go on. These are much more powerful fans. Go on and run for about 15 minutes to blow the smoke and gases out of the tunnel before another train can pass through. You'll find trains waiting at the East Portal siding for the tunnel to clear. And then they'll go through, and if another train is following him, he'll have to wait there until the train is completely through the tunnel, which takes about 20 minutes or so. And then for the tunnel to be ventilated, which is another 20 minutes or so. So you'll find a train maybe sitting there just waiting for that process.
Prompted by the city of Denver, the Colorado State Legislature passed a bill in 1922 that paid for the Moffat Tunnel. As part of the project, Denver was deeded about 90 acres for a mountain park. This is now the base area of Winter Park Resort Area, a 7,000-acre ski complex opened on January 1st, 1940. Beginning in the 1960s and early 1970s and through today, the town of Winter Park boomed with new condominiums, motels, and retail stores. From a vantage point above the west portal of the tunnel, the development seems to crowd the Moffat Tunnel subdivision main line. Winter Park is home to a 7,110-foot siding. At the east end of the siding, an eastbound BNSF grain train waits to meet a westbound. The lead unit's another GE C44-9, common power on many of BNSF's non-intermodal trains. Finally, the westbound rolls into view, another UP empty coal train headed back to the Craig branch. Anyone driving through Fraser might wonder what these two locomotives are doing stopped on the siding. The sight of a loaded unit coal train backing west on the main line only adds to the mystery. The only clue to an unsuspecting observer was a snippet of conversation between the dispatcher and the train making the backup move.
Let's see if we got, he ties these train down, we back you back to Tabernash there where we can put that unit on the head end to get you up to Winter Park. Can you go from Winter Park on then or not?
They'll need him through the hole, dispatcher.
Need him through the hole, okay. Dispatcher 82 to SP-247, over.
SP-247, come in, over.
All right, let's go ahead and tie your train down there. Cut your power off. I'll run you up to Fraser, in on the siding, and then back him down clear East Fraser there, and then put you on the point and take him through the tunnel, over.
Okay, roger, start tying down.
All right.
It begins to make sense. SP-247 is one of two units yanked off an eastbound coal train parked in the siding at Tabernash, 4 miles to the west. The train backing up is an eastbound loaded coal train that stalled at Winter Park when one of its AC 4400s failed. In short, it's SP-247 to the rescue. Things only get worse when the stalled train's crew dies on the 12-hour hours of service rule, also known as the hog law. Finally, the stalled train makes its move. Amtrak's eastbound California Zephyr shows no sign of being underpowered when it rolls into the station at Fraser after dark. The open-air station also sees UP's winter ski train. After unloading the skiers at Winter Park, the train lays over at Fraser. During the brief stop, an Amtrak attendant brings the head-end crew something to eat from the dining car. With another 62 miles to go before it reaches Denver Union Station, the Zephyr continues its trip. You wouldn't know it from the look of the place, but Tabernash used to be an important junction to the Denver and Salt Lake before construction of the Moffat Tunnel.
Tabernash is the next siding west of Fraser. It is a long siding, and trains are met there very frequently. Tabernash was also a very important place in the Denver and Salt Lake days. They had major locomotive facilities there, and coaling towers and what have you. All that's gone now, of course, but there is as I mentioned, a long siding, and there's also a Y there, which are used to turn helpers and also to turn the ski train. Anything else needs to be turned.
The 9,830-foot siding at Tabernash doubles as a parking lot. What looks like a string of stored cars is actually the eastbound coal train abandoned by SB 247. It's tied down, which means its brakes have been set by hand to prevent the cars from rolling away by accident. Work trains are often a haven for aging rolling stock. Old logos and road names recall railroads such as Missouri Pacific, merged with UP in 1982. A faded herald promotes UP's automated railway of the 1960s. Granby was just a collection of huts before the railroad reached there in July 1905. A small mining community, Granby was also the jumping-off point for anyone headed to nearby Grand Lake. With the coming of the automobile, tourist trade took off. Granby became the de facto back door to the Rocky Mountain National Park by way of Highway 34. Famous as the Trail Ridge Road, it crosses the Continental Divide at 12,183 feet in Rocky Mountain National Park. A depot in Granby serves the California Zephyr and provides a backdrop for UP freights. Between Granby and Kremling, Highway 40 generally follows the railroad through ranch country. It's hardly the scenic wonderland Colorado's known for, until you get to Byers Canyon.
Byers Canyon is located just west of the siding at Hot Sulphur Springs. It's a short, very scenic little canyon. What's nice about it is Highway 40 travels along one side of the canyon and the railroad along the other side. So it's very easy for someone to follow a train through there. There are a few little pullouts in there, so stop and watch the train go by. Up to about Granby, trains move fairly slow because of the grades and the curvature. But once they get to Granby, they speed along pretty good, westbound trains. Through Hot Sulphur Springs, of course they have to slow down through Byers Canyon. Once out of the canyon, they'll speed up pretty good going through Flat and Troublesome and over to Kremling.
Speed isn't something that American Orient Express customers expect, or desire for that matter. One of the world's premier cruise trains, AOE forgoes simply getting there for getting there in comfort and style. Generally, that means soaking up the scenery on 7 of North America's most scenic and historic rail routes. On the other hand, the elegant train and its Amtrak Genesis units seem quite happy to make like a Metroliner on the fast track west of Byers Canyon. At Troublesome, a westbound coal train hustles down the same stretch of track behind GM's answer to the AC 4400, the 4,300 horsepower SD90-43 Mac. Like Granby, Kremling was little more than a hamlet before the railroad arrived. Then it blossomed as the base camp for construction of the line through another of the Moffat Tunnel sub's scenic attractions, Gore Canyon.
Gore Canyon is a rather spectacular canyon west of Kremling. It's mostly inaccessible, but you can take Grand County Road 1. It's an all-weather gravel road. It's a very fine road west out of a point near Kremling, and come up to an observation point where you're looking down over the railroad, and you can see the train snake through the tunnel down there. It's really a fantastic place just to go and sit and watch and wait for trains.
Radium sounds like a station that glows in the dark. In fact, it's another wide spot in the railroad, little more than a few houses along the right-of-way. And while the town itself doesn't glow, the same can't be said of UP's eastbound Z train as it rolls through town on a late fall afternoon. On the Moffat Tunnel sub without a unit coal train, here in eastbound, led by an SP AC 4400. morning finds a westbound UP merchandise freight rolling through town with a consist that's anything but a unit train. Yarmany's claim to fame is a 4,560-foot siding. Granted, it's about 4,000 feet shorter than the siding at Radium, but that doesn't keep the UP dispatcher from staging a meet between a work train and the eastbound Z train. The Norfolk Southern units on the work train are part of a locomotive pool between UP and NS. The pool allows trains to operate between the two railroads without changing power. With the work train, the NS units are paying back horsepower hours for UP units operating on NS. Milepost 128.8 marks the end of our story at Orestad. The original Denver and Salt Lake turned north off the Colorado River at Orestad and headed for the coal fields near Craig in northwestern Colorado. To the south, D&SL rival Denver and Rio Grande looked at the Moffat Tunnel and got an idea. If it built 40 miles up the river from the junction of the Colorado and Eagle Rivers, it could connect with the D&SL and get a shorter route between Denver and Salt Lake City. What became the Dotsero Cutoff opened in 1934. The Rio Grande got trackage rights on the D&SL between Denver and Bond, a mile and a half west of Orestad. Both railroads came out ahead. Denver was finally on a transcontinental main line, and DNRG's route between Denver and Salt Lake City was 175 miles shorter. The two roads finally merged on April 11, 1947. David Moffat's hardscrabble route across the Rocky Mountains witnessed many changes over the years. If we've learned anything from the history of American railroading, it's that change will continue. At least we can be glad to watch the future unfold on one of the most beautiful rail routes in North America, UP's Moffat Line.
Thank you for watching this edition of the Ultimate Railroading DVD series. Look ahead to future installments as together we rediscover the past, experience the present, and look forward to the future of the world of trains around us.